So I'm looking at this graph of the most popular leaders in the world, and we find Modi's at the top, then Sheinbaum of Mexico, Milei of Argentina, and Albanese of Australia. So the interesting thing about India, Mexico, and Argentina is yes, they are democratic, but all three of them have lower incomes and higher levels of corruption and generally lower levels of education than Australia. So if you look at other comparable countries to Australia with in the low corruption, high income, and high levels of education, every other leader is lower than him. Switzerland is the next highest. Donald Trump is saying he's 49%. I just give him a couple months. He'll be back down to 30% in no time. But so Albanese, however, is an outlier because Donald Tusk is center right, Maloney's far right, and then you're down to 40% and everything below there. Why is Albanese has been the Prime Minister of Australia for 3 years now, and he just won re-election. What is the now? If you were to read what makes him so popular? Now, if you were to go on to certain corners of Twitter and Blue Sky, you would say, well, he's probably like this really centrist dude who's like always trying to bring everybody together, never too extreme, never too radical. He probably opposes parental leave. He probably is pretty conservative on healthcare benefits and pretty conservative on education. At least this seems to be uh, the message I seem to find a lot in American media and in social media. He probably is a staunch supporter of Netanyahu in Israel. He probably is very skeptical on Ukraine because you don't want to be too radical, man. And he probably is very anti, you know, travel and doesn't want to work too fast on climate change. Okay, so let's look at it. Oh, I'm totally wrong about that. I knew I was wrong. He pledged further logistical support to Ukraine, so he didn't hold back from Ukraine. He looked at, he's embraced his relations with Australia, the US, the UK through AUKUS. He has worked on reducing tariffs to China and has generally been a pretty progressive dude. Let's look more at his political views. Looks like a socialist. He's probably like super right wing, like iffy on gay. Oh, he supports abortion. He supports and advocates for LGBT rights, and he voted in favor of gay marriage all the way back in 2012. So not very moderate there. Supports drug decriminalization and decriminalizing even hard drugs. He has he opposes the turning back of asylum seekers who arrive via boat and but then he's a little iffy on the boat turnbacks. The movement of Indonesians into Australia is a big issue. But he does support Afghan refugees in Afghanistan. The point is that he's actually quite liberal. Times of Israel categorizes him as a supporter of Palestine. He condemns the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but he also saying that yes, I oppose China's human rights record, but I'm not going to blow up the relationship over it. So he's taking a really a balanced approach there. Sorry about that. Um, Supports carbon pricing. So if we actually look at the data, this leads into the article I wrote yesterday where I was thinking about, do you need a political centrist in order to win in the modern world? And if you look at it in detail, Australia is a pretty conservative country. If you look at John Howard, if you look at the the conservatives they've elected, they've been very conservative. So, if you look at it, Wikipedia, um, list of Australian federal elections. Here, and scroll down a bit, you're gonna find, they have often had, one. Why is the coloring on this so completely bonkers? Why is it not colored by? Oh, come on, don't do that. Go back to light. The coloring on this is useless. What is going on? Um, list of. I would like to see a clear. Alright, because if you look at Australia, you'll find he succeeded Scott Morrison, who, they had almost 10 years of conservative rule after, Australia tends to go back and forth between liberal and conservative, and um, there's this idea that there's this big, wide trend towards right wing government in the world today, but that doesn't seem to. That's only if you take a US centric view. That's only. And if you look in detail, you find that the left of center leaders who are losing tend to be pretty moderate in their viewpoints. And the 2025 election, it wasn't even close. Labor won 55% of the vote in the two-party preferred survey. They have 94 seats when they only need 76 seats for a majority, and this is with ranked voting. This is as fair as it gets. So, what I'm saying is if you really study this, you really look at it, centrism, like you saw with Joe Biden, doesn't, and the hesitancy of Schultz to provide aid to Ukraine quickly seems to be a recipe for disaster. It looks like if you really want to know how to get a left of center popular candidate who's able to win re-election, you have to look at Anthony Albanese. And if you say, well, what if, look at the UK, which gets a lot of press attention. Keir Starmer's at 32% approval. He's only been in office for a couple years. It took Trudeau a decade to get down to 31%. And then, he stepped down after being lambasted by the media for a long time. And there you go. And the Liberal Party still won. Um, Also, I'm going to be really interested what happens to Canada when they lose their carbon dividend over the next couple months. But we're not quite there yet. When they stop getting those checks, that's going to be fascinating. But point being, if you want to have a left of center popular leader who's really going to be able to win re-election and remain high levels of support, you should look to Australia, which is one of the most conservative countries in the free developed world. Anthony Albanese shows a path, and it's actually not to go to the center. The real answer is to stand for something. And if you do that, you will find success.